There's a painting in London where the most important character is a mirror. Not a mirror as decoration, a mirror is evidence. Because in the back of the room, hanging like a quiet eye on the wall, is a convex mirror that shows more than the painting shows. Two extra figures appear in its reflection, standing in the doorway, right where we would be. And suddenly, the painting stops being a portrait and becomes a scene, a moment, a mystery. Welcome to Art Happens, the divine mess of art history, presented by J² Atelier. I'm James William Moore, and today's art history mystery is Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini's portrait, Secrets in the Mirror. Let's crack this open and take a look at it. The artist, Jan van Eyck. The date of the painting is 1434. The medium, oil on oak panel. It currently is hanging in the National Gallery in London. The title you'll hear a lot, Portrait of Giovanni and his wife. And yes, that question mark is doing work. The image is deceptively straightforward. A well-dressed couple in a furnished room. But then the details start behaving like clues. A single candle burning in a chandelier. Shoes left on the floor. A little dog staring directly out at us. Expensive fruit near the window. Prayer beads. And center stage, the mirror, ringed with tiny scenes from the Passion of Christ. Every object feels placed. Every placement feels like it means something. And every meaning is up for debate. Above the mirror is a line of text painted as if it's written on the wall itself. Johann de Eyck, Fui Eyck, 1434. The translation, Jan van Eyck was here, 1434. Not painted this, not made by this, but was here. That phrasing is unusual. It reads like a witness statement, like graffiti, elegant, Latin, and devastatingly confident. So the first big question in this mystery is simple. Why does the artist want us to think of him as present in the room? Let's pin the evidence to the board. The dog, front and center, bright-eyed, looking right at us. This icon often reads as fidelity or loyalty, and it's also a status symbol. The fruit, those oranges, sitting casually, expensive in Northern Europe at the time, a flex disguised as a snack. The beads, a strand of prayer beads painted with almost microscopic attention, piety, devotion, wealth, or all three at once. The shoes, discarded footwear, sometimes read as ritual, sometimes read as just indoor etiquette. This matters because interpretations get dramatic fast. The candle, a single lit candle in a grand chandelier, suggesting ceremony, presence, witness, or something more haunting, depending on your theory. The mirror, convex, reflective, and ringed with tiny passion scenes, expanding the room beyond the frame and introducing two additional figures in the doorway. So, what are we looking at? A wedding? A betrothal? A memorial? A legal record? Or a portrait that wants to be mistaken for a document? For generations, many viewers have treated this painting like a wedding scene. In 1934, art historian Erwin Panofsky published a hugely influential interpretation arguing the painting functioned like a kind of pictorial marriage document, with the signature acting like a witness attestation and the mirrors extra figures as required witnesses. But here's the twist. The National Gallery's own scholarship points out serious problems with Panofsky's reading, especially around the identity of the sitters and the timeline Panofsky proposed. And that's the nature of this painting. The more certain someone sounds, the more the painting quietly raises an eyebrow. Because Van Eyck gives us symbols, but he doesn't give us a caption. Let's return to the mirror, because the mirror is the painting's greatest trick, and also notes that despite how real the room feels, there are inconsistencies if you treat it like a literal architectural space. In other words, Van Eyck is constructing a convincing reality, not necessarily recording a documentary snapshot. It reflects the couple from behind, sure, but it also reflects the doorway and two figures entering, one in blue, one in red. The National Gallery notes this reflection is a key part of the painting's spatial game, and also notes that despite how real the room feels, there are inconsistencies if you treat it like a literal architectural space. In other words, Van Eyck is constructing a convincing reality, not necessarily recording a documentary shot. So what does the mirror do? It makes the painting self-aware. It turns the scene into a stage. It implies an audience. It implies a rival. And the scariest question becomes, are those two figures witnesses, or are they us? Here's what makes this mystery endure. Van Eyck paints everything with such precision that we can assume it must be a code. But precision can be used for two purposes. The first, to clarify meaning, and the second, to intensify ambiguity. Because if every object feels intentional, then every object becomes suspicious. That dog isn't just cute, it's a statement. That candle isn't just lit, it's a signal. That fruit isn't just fruit, it's social performance. And that mirror, that mirror is the painting whispering, I know you're watching. So whether the painting depicts a marriage, a pledge, a memorial, a status portrait, or a brilliant mashup of all of the above, it succeeds as a psychological trap. It invites you to interpret, and then it watches you interpret. So what do you conclude? We conclude that the Arnolfini portrait is engineered to make meaning multiply. It's a portrait that behaves like a document, a domestic interior that behaves like a stage, a mirror that behaves like a narrator. And Van Eyck, standing here, signed into the room, makes the act of looking part of the artwork's subject. And this brings us to the last brushstroke, the line this mystery leaves behind like a fingerprint on glass. In art, every mirror reflects both the artist and the viewer. You've been listening to Art Happens, the Divine Mess of Art History, presented by J Squared Atelier. I'm James William Moore. If you love this kind of elegant weirdness, symbols, stories, and the way art stares right back, subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you want the creative process side of the story, how artists make the magic, come join me on Lattes and Art. Until next time, watch the mirrors. They're never just mirrors.